All right, welcome back, everybody. Week 3, GE115, which is AutoCAD. I'm going to cover a lot today, so let's get started, I guess. A lot of practice. Oh, before I start, there were some questions about last week. You just submitted PDFs, and that's all I wanted last week. I just really wanted to make sure we have the software going and that you can produce a drawing. I know those are sketches, but this week you're going to be submitting the files. So you really need to submit a 2019 file. So if you have downloaded the wrong version of software, you should be able to still get it. And I'm going to show it to you. If you go save as, you can change the version here to some past versions. So you should be able to find hopefully a 2019 version that you can save down to. I am running 2019, so obviously I can't save down to it. But if you have a newer version, that's fine. There could be some button differences up here, but it'll operate, for what we're going to do, it'll operate pretty much the way we want it to. So just remember to save it down so I can open it and then check it. So you're going to be submitting a AutoCAD file and a PDF for every assignment, and you have 4 practice problems. So that's a total of 8 files that you're going to upload. I'm not sure if you can upload multiple files. If you cannot, then you'll just have to reply to your own posting in that homework area. So if you have any problems with that, reach out to me. There's a lot, so don't wait until Wednesday night to do it. It's due Thursday night. Try and get it done earlier. So I'm going to go over some of it here quite shortly. Let me see if I can show you. I'll do a camera switch here. All right, so this is what one of them looks like in the book. I put up the page number so you'll be able to find these okay. But right now, what I'm going to talk about is this information. I'm just going to do some basic drawing technique stuff for you first. And then we are going to talk about paper and model, because we have to do that prior to doing dimensioning, which then will push us into scaling and dimensioning. I'll do a little text work. So there's a lot of information that's going to come to you. So you might want to, pause this recording and, practice kind of as you go along with me. That might be the best way to do it. Don't try and just watch this and then do things. If you've not run AutoCAD before, this will be a lot of information. So go for that wisely. I'm going to leave myself on screen here. I want to talk about just regular drawing technique. We did coordinates last time. And now I'm going to show you just some aim and shoot technique. So I'm going to get the line command going by clicking on the line and then picking a start point, and that gets my rubber band going, right? If you have the ortho snap on every 15 degrees, I think, every 30 degrees it's set to right now, because you can see in this display next to my cursor, it's telling you that it's at a 30-degree angle, okay? So then if I could go up and snap to 60. So those are really handy, right? If I get on one of these angles, like the 30, and then I type in, 25 and hit enter, it's gonna go 25 units in that 30 degrees. So that's called just aim and shoot. At least that's what I call it. If I put in 50 and I know that cursor was in the horizontal, then it goes in the horizontal. If I point it up and then put in 25, it'll go up 25. So I'm just aiming and putting in a distance, but I'm making sure that these snaps are on. And those are down here. I think it's this one. Yeah. Restrict cursor to specified angle. And you can change those. You can tighten them up. Like I could go to every 10 degrees. So now it's every 10 degrees that I get, right? So the ortho is super, super important. along with the snaps. And the snaps are those things, those geographic shapes that show up that grab specific points of objects like endpoints or middle points. See, a triangle is middle and the square is end. Those are critical. I have some weird line types going on here. Let me stop that. All right. Now, let's on the base letter 0, which is continuous lines. I will talk about line types 2 in a bit. It's all going to get a bit complicated, so just bear with me. But aim and shoot, very, very handy to use it all the time. There's also, I'm just going to erase this. I'm going to hit E and enter and then choose it and then hit the space bar. The space bar is the same as the enter button. And you can kind of tap it with your thumb. That's what I do. So let's see. If you have to draw angles, the display for angles is on. It should be. So if I go line and I hit the start button, oh, it's not. So it is right there. So I can input into that gray box next to my cursor. I guess I can't really point to it because if I point to it, move my mouse, it disappears. But that's called a kind of a dynamic input. In other words, if I put in, I'll put in 50, then if I hit the tab, oh, it's not going here. Let me get it going. Let's see where it's at here. I think it's called dynamic input. And those are the snaps. That's full restriction, X and Y. And this is snap mode. Yeah, I don't see it right now, so I'll have to look that up for you. You can input a specific angle, so you'd have to do it with a polar input instead of an X and Y input. So if I wanted this line to be at 14 units long at 31 degrees, my snap is not going to give me that, right? It'll give me different angles, but not the angle that I want. So I should be able to go shift tab. That's going to give me a relative input. And then I can put it in terms of, let's say 30 units long at an angle of, and use the angle symbol for that. And then you can put in like 32 degrees. And it'll do it. So that should be the length that I want and the angle. So you might have to practice that a little bit, but there's the polar input instead of an X and Y input. Very handy to be able to do that. Now, there is a dynamic way to do that, but I don't see the dynamic toolbar right now. Let me look real quick and see if it's in here. Dynamic UCS, that could be it. So I just clicked this button over here to get these turned on and off. Oh, dynamic input, there it is. So I'll click that. So now that'll become available down here. Let's see if we can find it. Dynamic input right there. So I'm going to click it and now it's on. So now you can see that dynamic input stays put, right? So I can then toggle between them. So I can go 20 units, and then I can tab to the angle and say an angle of 175. Boom, it doesn't. So that's the dynamic input that you might want. So all of those possible input and control systems are down here, and you can get to them here. There's a lot here, so have some fun with that, I guess. All right. That's some drawing technique that's really good. We also use things like copy and mirror and those kind of things, and those are in the modify area. So I think you'll probably figure it out. If you mouse over mirror and just leave your mouse there, it'll expand and get bigger. I didn't do that. It just does it on its own. And then you can read about it and it'll describe to you how it works. So these are power commands, power editing commands that you can use to, repeat something if something is similar or the mirror image of, you don't want to have to draw it. You just want to make a copy of it or a rotation or a mirror. And that's all right in here. And you can learn about those. All right, now let's get into a little more, I don't know if it's tricky stuff or not tricky stuff, but there are two spaces in AutoCAD and we want to draw in model space. And that's what this tab is here, model space. So if I draw, I won't draw in here. I haven't talked about layers yet, so we're not going to go there, but in model space, you create the drawings that you want. Then as you go to produce a drawing, like print it out or dimension it, you have to figure out how big this object is and how well it'll fit on a piece of paper. Now, I have a piece of A paper and B paper set up. These are your paper spaces. That's called paper space. You'll see how it looks much different. It looks like a piece of paper. And over here, down in this area, it says paper. That means that I am essentially right now, if I drew a line, I am drawing in this space that's not in model space. I'm going to do it all the way across just so you see how it works. It's not in model space, it's on the piece of paper. This is where we put things like general notes, title blocks, which you can see I have created here in paper space. Other things that you just want on the paper, but not part of the model. This line exists in paper space. If I go back to model, I don't see it because it's not in here. So when you're in paper space, and you know you are because it says paper right here, this is where we produce the text for the title blocks and general notes, okay? I'm gonna erase this. Now I'm gonna get my object to show up here. So I'm gonna switch from paper to, now I am in model space. This thing's in my way. I don't know how to move it. Oh, there we go. Everything's good. Perfect. See, it says model. Now, I can work in model space. Like I can actually draw in here and it's exactly like being in here. Same exact thing. When you're in model, you're in model. It's just this view, I get to see the paper too. I never draw in this space, but this is where you set it up. So I'm going to zoom back until I see my object. I'll see my object. Where is it at? Oh, it's so small, probably. Oh, there it is. All right. You can always just go zoom alt too. That'll do it. When you do a lot of zooming, AutoCAD does this. It turns circles into straight lines just to save memory because it's a very memory intensive thing. You can type in region and it'll clean it up. All right, so there's my drawing now showing up on my piece of paper. And the reason we do this is we must determine the scale. Before you dimension, you've got to determine the scale. Then you can dimension, okay? So I don't really know what size I drew this, but here's where, and in model space is where you do this, not in paper, but we want to see the paper. I'm going to determine my scale. So I'm going to just go in here and I'm just going to take a guess. And these are the architectural scales and these are the engineering scales. So I'm going to work with the engineering scales for now, and I'm going to choose 1 to 100. Well, that looks very small. That's too small. So I'm going to choose 1 to 50. Getting better, but not very fast getting better. So I'm going to try 1 to 10. Now, I want to fill this paper up 1 to 5, but I want enough room for dimensions. But 1 to 5 looks pretty good on this piece of paper. Okay. That's what you do in paper space is you determine the scale. Okay. It's right here, 1 to 5. So now as I go back to model, you'll see that this is different. And we want this to match. So I want this to be 1 to 5. This is your scaling factor for objects. Objects like text and dimensioning, because we want to put them in at the size that we want out on the paper. Like I want 1/8 inch text on the paper, or I want 3/16 text on the paper. But I don't want to have to figure out, oh, what's the scaling factor, 1 to 5? How big do I make it? All that kind of stuff. I don't want to have to figure that out. I want to just have the software do it for me. This is how you do that. You set this to 1 to 5. This is called the annotation scale factor. It is different than this. This is just the regular old viewport scale factor. But we need to know this to match it to this annotative scale. Now, when I place text, if I use the style annotative, then it will automatically change the size as needed. Super cool. Like if I go and say, okay, I want to place text, but I don't really know what text style I'm using, I want to first pull this down and say, oh, perfect. My text is annotative. It's not standard. And my dimensioning is annotated, not. Yours will be standard, like when you open a default drawing. You've got to switch it to annotated, right? And then if you want to actually choose those sizes, you click on this button to get into the style and all the settings. Be careful in here because there are a lot of settings. And if you start changing them all, it's going to not work. And I'm never going to be able to figure that out to help you. You're just going to have to kind of start over with your dimensioning technique. But here it is, paper text height. I'm going to change that to 1/8 of an inch. Pretty small, but I like small text. Okay. And here's some font information and yeah, width factor, like how wide you can see the width factor change. So keep an eye on this text over here. If I put in a 0.7, that's kind of nice if you're squeezing text in, right? That'll help. Anyway, I'm going to say, okay, that looks good. I'm going to keep all that for my annotative, and I'm going to close. All right, so now when I place, and I prefer single line text, this would be here, or I can do it here. I'm just going to put it here so you can see what happens. Single line text, first you place it. Notice it doesn't give you a question like, what's the text height? Because it's figuring it out for you based on this scale and based on what you put in the style, right? But it does want to know what angle, and the default is 0. So I'm just going to hit enter to accept the 0, and I'm going to write circle. And twice to get out. There it is. It might look small here, but when you go to the paper space, it is 1/8 inch text in paper space. That's what's important, right? Same thing with dimensioning. Now that I know that my dimensioning is set to annotative, I'm curious what that height is. So I'm going to go into the annotative style and modify it. And I'm going to look for the text height, 1/8 inch, because I already changed it because that's what I like. All right. Notice there are a pile of things you can change in here. Be careful. If you start changing everything, your dimensioning will not work. I can never figure that out. There's no way. There are, I want to say thousands of settings, but maybe not. Maybe there's hundreds of settings. But there's no way I can debug that virtually. And sometimes even in class, I cannot figure it out because y'all have mucked it up somehow. So don't do that. Just make small changes and then go try things. That's the way to do it. All right. So we're going to set it current. It was already set current and close it. Now when I dimension, let's see what happens. I'm going to go dimension. And I'm going to choose this here circle, and I'm going to place it out here. Notice there's some interesting units that are happening that I might not want to happen that way. That all gets changed inside of the dimension style here, right? If I wanted, instead of the primary unit of architecture, if I wanted it in decimal, and maybe I want it not in 4 places, I want it in 2 places. And I say, okay. and close, it'll make that change for me. So I'm going to get rid of this dimension. It will update it for me, but I'm going to go into that. And then I'll place another one here and we'll see what we get with our new dimension style. There we go. Now those two look similar in height. This doesn't have the squishiness to it that that text does, or the width factor. But let's go look at it here in paper space. There we go. That should be an 1/8 inch because I set this up to do it. Okay. It works the same way in paper space, right? If I go single line text and I want to place it right here, I'll go 0. Right? So there it is. That is 1/8 text in paper space. And remember, this is just in paper space, not in model space. So it's kind of nice because things that are in paper space don't get manipulated when you screw around with the model space. So in model space, like if I pan this around, paper space stuff is not affected. If you zoom in here, you've just screwed up your scale factor. So that'll happen a lot. And you just go back and set it and then pan it around, reposition it, kind of do all that in the end when you're ready to produce it. Okay. So that was a lot. That was paper space, model space. That was dimensioning and text. There's much, much more to those pieces, but that's a basic get started thing. Figure out your scale first before you dimension or place text. Then you'll be ready to go. All right. I think that's pretty much all I wanted to do. I think I've asked for some title blocks and some paper space work. So, when you go to print this, you can just print it from here. You don't have to be in paper space, but I just went there. But notice that the print option, one is called layout. That's these guys. That's this layout. So it's looking at this layout to print. So I'll just set it to PDF so we can do a preview. So it's going to do that. Notice that the one edge is missing. So that just means it's outside. Let's go look, see. It's outside the little dotted line. See the dotted line? That's the printable area and my border's out here. So I just need to get this over. Use scripts real quick. I think I've shown you that, but I can kind of scoot it in a little bit. So now you can see that it's inside. So I don't know why that is. Oh, it's probably because of the whole PDF. But if you're missing one, that's what's going wrong. It's outside the printable area. Now, if you go to a printer, that changes. The buffer changes. So let's get scooted down a little bit. And then all that's inside all the way around, right? So let's just see what it does. By layout, onto this size piece of paper. And again, I'm just going to go to this so I can preview it. And it should all fit. Yeah, perfect. Like I have some issues down here. Now I'm going to have a block on the viewport. So, all right, perfect. So that's going to be helpful for you. But I'm going to just look at the files, so the PDF. Sometimes I get lazy and just glance at the PDF, and if there's issues, then I go to the file. But I'll be looking at files this go around for week 3. All right, take care. Nice job, everybody. Let me know what the struggles are, and I'll try to help.